exploring, first of a series, we're exploring the concept of cause and effect, which is fundamental to the teachings of religious science, which is what this is. New Thought, Religious Science. And the theme for this month is the invisible behind the visible. Okay? So in the Law of Attraction chapter of Ernest Holmes' book, Science of Mind book, this is one of my favorite readings by him. And if you haven't read this one chapter, it's chapter 18 in the Science of Mind textbook. It's the best, well, they're all good chapters, but it's one of my favorite, the Law of Attraction. He writes, everything originates in the one, comes from the same source. As God thought makes worlds and peoples them with living things, so our thought makes our world and peoples it with our experiences. By the activity of our thought, things come into our life. We have thought that outside things controlled us, when all the time we have had within that which could have changed everything and given us the freedom from bondage. So that whole thought that we have within us the thing that could change all of our experiences. We all have it. It's the cause. You know, we talk about cause and effect. It always works. There has to be a cause to have the effect. There had to be someone that created this podium before the podium was here. So cause and effect. So it's the invisible substance that we form things or experiences out of through our thought, through our thinking, and through our feelings. And Ernest Holmes is very clear about cause is thought. But I have a little more rounded opinion about cause. And I think that the consciousness, it is everything. It's thought, it's feelings, it's activities, it's our actions, it's our beliefs, it's our values. So when we talk about consciousness and conscious thought, it really does contain all of those things, because it's our beliefs, it's our emotions, it's not only our thoughts and our words, it's all of it together that create our experiences. So if you don't like what you're experiencing, change your thinking. Thank you, Carol. So each week we're going to look at a different state of consciousness. And today we are bringing forth the consciousness of surrender. So today's talk is going to be about surrender. The word surrender often brings up the images of giving up, of surrendering. Well, not surrendering, of giving up, of waving the white flag, or conceding a loss. So when we hear that word surrender, sometimes it has that connotation to it. It sounds like it's extremely disempowering, when actually, as we'll see today, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. Today we are going to look at that word surrender in a whole new light, as we delve into the consciousness of surrender, and knowing that it really is a launching pad. Surrendering is a launching pad for us to soar into greater degrees of livingness. So surrendering is a great thing, and it's also a difficult thing, and we're going to talk about that today. So I don't mean white flags of conceding, of giving up, but then what do I mean by surrender exactly? And so I once heard a spiritual practice of surrender, and isn't that something to think of surrender as a spiritual practice? Did you ever think of it like that before? I didn't until the thought occurred to me. It's really a conscious activity to surrender. It's a spiritual conscious activity. So I heard it defined this way, and I like this. Having a belief that as deeply as we are willing to let go, Spirit is willing to fill us up. So that's beautiful, but I'm going to make it a little more personal. So having a belief that as deeply as I am willing to let go, Spirit is willing to fill me up. And I want to be filled up with good. I want that divine good to fill me, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be space energetically within us. See, we're all energy. And if we're holding on tightly to all of our beliefs and our values and every other thing that we've ever learned that no longer serve us, there's no room for the flow of good to circulate in our lives, in our thinking, in our emotional states, in our beliefs. So right now, take a deep breath, if you will. And exhale it, and just take one more deep breath. Hold it. Are you afraid you won't have enough air while you're holding it? Okay, breathe. So was anyone concerned that there wasn't enough air?
No.
No. Great. So that means that you have totally and completely surrendered to breathing. You trust and you have faith that there's plenty of air. Do you have that same kind of certainty that as deeply as you are willing to go, to let go, to surrender, that Spirit is willing to fill you up? Do you have that same kind of belief?
Yes.
You do? Well, if you don't, you're in the right place today. Because that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have this great character in the Bible, Elijah. So we're going to talk a little bit about Elijah, and then we're going to metaphysically switch it around to see how it applies to us practically in our lives. Because as we say, the spirituality that we teach, that we hopefully live here, should be practical. It should be user-friendly. User-friendly. So Elijah, he was Jehovah's champion in a hostile land where polytheism, the worship of many gods, was the accepted religion. So against overwhelming odds, he slain hundreds of prophets, understandingly bringing down upon his head the wrath of Queen Jezebel. So Elijah fled for his life. Discouraged, tired, and downhearted, he sat down under a juniper tree, and cried out, "It is enough now, O Jehovah. Take my life away." Then he dropped off to sleep. And we are told that an angel touched him and instructed him to journey on for 40 days. So he did. He traveled for 40 days until he reached Mount Horeb. And there he experienced the profound revelation that God is not in the wind, God is not in the fire, God is not in the earthquake, but God is in that still small voice within. That's where the divine is. So let's dissect the story metaphysically in the context of surrender. So Elijah is fighting a polytheistic people, right? People who believe in many gods. Could we look at that then as a struggle with many different thoughts? Thoughts that we really believe are God. We believe they are truth. We absolutely believe our beliefs are true. They're just beliefs. You know what I'm talking about, the mind chatter, all of the stuff that's going on in the ego mind, the old ideas, the worrying, the fears, the littleness. When we are created to be expansive, great beings, that kind of stuff. The rights, the wrongs, and I'm doing it this way or that way, surrendering all of that, surrendering it. And really, by being in this state of mind struggle, if you will, can be really exhausting. Yes? Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, we can really make ourselves tired with our thinking. And we're always thinking. It's not like, we take a break and we're always thinking. So Elijah is exhausted. And he runs away discouraged, afraid for his life. Dejected, he sits under this juniper tree and says, "That's enough, God. That's all I can do. That's enough, God. Take me away." Now this sounds on the surface like a white flag is waving, but truly is true surrender. He is surrendering. He's surrendering. And as the story unfolds, it isn't really Elijah conceding it all, but rather this is the moment of his complete surrender to God. He's giving up the fight, the battle. And when you get to the point, and I think a lot of us, tell me if I'm wrong, I know I have, a lot of us get to this point where we say, okay, that's enough. You do it, God. I can't come up with any more answers. I'm done. That's the most beautiful state to be in. Because you're surrendering to this higher power that knows all, that is all, and that has been created, that created us so it can give to us more of itself, more of its good. And so when Elijah did that, he made a complete surrender, a letting go of the struggle. He let go of the struggle, of the warring consciousness, and he fell asleep. He fell asleep so he could rest. Thank goodness we have sleep, so we can rest. So that monkey mind then was finally quiet, and it was then and only then that the angel came. So can we think about the angel as a divine idea? So the angel represents, metaphysically, a divine idea. As he let go, divinity moved in. So a divine idea moved in. It came to him. And this idea was to continue his journey. And so he did his journey for 40 days. He continued on this journey. And we know this is the universal number, because 40 is always coming up, for all the time that is needed to have a spiritual awakening. So you had Jesus in the desert, you had Moses in the wilderness, Buddha 49 days under the Bodhi tree. So you see it throughout the Bible. 40 is a really mystical number. So it's all the time that is necessary, 40, for a spiritual awakening. So after his journey of 40 days, or after all the time it took, because it's all the time it took, Elijah came to the profound realization. He realized that outer experiences, the things that our monkey mind has always been fighting so hard, had no power over him. So he came to realize that all of these thoughts that he was in fear of had no true power over him. Only what he thought had, because that's what our thoughts do sometimes. They put us in the state of fear of a thing that might not even happen. But so, we do this to ourselves. So we surrender it right here, right now. So Elijah came to this realization that the still, small voice of God was now guiding him. And this is a wonderful illustration, I think, of the power of ceasing the battle, the struggle, getting quiet and be willing to listen. Be willing to listen for that still, small voice, the voice of God within us. This is the divine intelligence, and I feel come from my heart, because when you listen to the heart, there is no judgment in the heart intelligence. And I talk about that a lot because that's been one of my gifts that I've gotten in the last couple of years, listening to my heart, because that's where my intuition lies. And that is true guidance, because my ego mind, my monkey mind, is not in my heart. It's up here in my thoughts. So when we surrender to that still small voice, we are really surrendering to the will of God. And the will of God always expresses in divine, unconditional love. We talk about a loving God. We believe here that is a God of love. And there's no duality in this mind of God. It is simply a beautiful, creative, loving energy. That is what God is here. And I like that because it feels really good. And if I'm going to live my life, I'm going to choose the good thoughts. I'm going to choose the beliefs that serve me and that make me happy and that uplift me. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did it the other way and it didn't feel good. Kind of living in fear, folks. So perhaps we are afraid. Sometimes we can be afraid of surrender too. Because what comes with surrender? Change sometimes. So sometimes it means we have to change. Change could be absolutely the best thing we could ever do for ourselves. Perhaps we are afraid to say the prayer, thy will be done. Thy will be done. Perhaps we're hanging on to an old belief that it means that we won't get what we want. If we say thy will be, that's a dualistic God that we speak of when we say, if we're afraid that there's a judging God up there, thy will be done. What if God's will isn't for me? Well, that's the empowering thing about science of mind, religious science, is that we believe that this is a loving God that is for everything it creates and has created each and every one of us. What a joy. How wonderful. Could we see surrendering to God's will as something a little different? Could we see it as an experience of laying down the small self, the ideas, the fears, the littleness, the war that's always raging in our minds? Could we see it? Could we see this as a surrender to step into the unknown, the greater and higher self's expression, which is never fully revealed until the moment it is revealed? Let me read that again. Could we see surrendering, we're talking about surrendering to God's will as a willingness to step into the unknown, the greater, the higher self's expression, which is never fully revealed until the moment it is revealed? Could we see surrendering to God's will as willing to lay down all that we think we know? Because we sure think we know everything. Yes, we do. To the one who knows beyond anything we can see. God is revealed as we let go. That's why the phrase let go and let God is so powerful. It is surrendering to a divinity that will always guide you and be there for you in every aspect of your life, if you but trust and believe it. It's about moving into that trust and the faith after we surrender. So I want you to repeat after me.
All right.
I am willing to surrender all that I think that I know.
I am willing to surrender all that I think that I know.
To all that God knows.
To all that God knows.
That's good.
All right.
I could just have you do that all morning, right? But it's the truth. You know, if we can come with a solution, because every seeming problem comes into this experience and your experience with a solution. And the divine is only solution because it doesn't see problems. It doesn't see problems. So what would it take for us to surrender the small, warring mind to the divine knower? The divine knower within that knows all. Could we just surrender? Could we claim thy will be done and rest in the sweet assurance that we can do no more? We can do no more. And as we begin to really trust, as I said, that God's will is good. It's good when we really get to that point. You know, we've been programmed, a lot of us, not everyone, has been programmed in this dualistic thinking, and so we don't even trust God, our Creator. We don't even trust it because we're afraid to do something wrong and be judged. So when you're in this teaching of unity, it's a teaching of acceptance, of empowerment to be the greatness. Barry talked about gifts, talents. We all have talents. We all have gifts to share. And you will not be judged for it because God's will is good. You are endowed with those talents by the divine creator of all that is. So in Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes, the nature of God, the will of God, and the power of God are one and the same thing. It matters not the countless millions of people through endless generations have misinterpreted this will of God and thought that it meant limitation and suffering. And he continues, the nature of God is demonstrated when it is understood. It is proved when it is known. If the truth about God is happiness, joy, self-expression, and abundance, then this is the truth we should seek to demonstrate in our own lives. Of that reading. And I have another one, a short one. where he says, we cannot be born of spirit unless we do the will of spirit, and the will of the spirit is goodness, peace, mercy, justice, and truth. It is conscious union with God. When you realize, when you deepen into that realization that there's only one power, one life, and we're all a part of it. No one is disconnected from it. It's that belief of disconnection that makes us go into fear, that makes us maybe not have the experiences we would like to demonstrate in our lives. So we're all part, we're unified. Unity, we're all unified in this oneness. And so I personally know that I had to surrender an entire way of living. And incidentally, it was 40 years. So I guess that you might say I had a spiritual awakening after 40 years. And so I stepped out. I stepped out into the unknown. And what did I find? I found this incredible piece of the divine waiting for me. That was there the whole time, but I was too preoccupied living a life that was fine then, for 40 years, fine then, till I had my spiritual awakening. So you don't have to wait till 40, it's just like a figurative. If you want to make a change after 10 or 20, that's good. Me, I go by the Bible. I waited 40. And I'm telling you, I'm still surrendering to the mind chatter. Because things, but I'll tell you what's so really cool is, I don't know, I'm living in the question mark right now. And the question mark, it came to me this morning, I love that. I'm living in the question mark, so everything that is unfolding is a mystery to me. But I know it's good, and I'm very excited to see what the universe is going to provide next for me to experience. I am loving this. It is so joyful. It is so freeing. It is so freeing. So when we surrender in faith and trust, this is when we find life is exciting. This is when we can soar. I love that word too. I'm going to soar. I'm soaring. And yeah, and I'm not saying it the New York way. It is S-O-A-R. It's not S-A-W. I am soaring. So surrender means. Oh God, it took people. That was when I made that up. That's why it took you so long to get it. Surrendering means having a belief that you are willing to let go. Spirit is willing to fill up. Let go and let the divine fill you up with the good. The good's already within us, actually. It's already in there. But we've covered it up with our beliefs and with all of our thinking and with all of our fear. We've covered it up. So now we're clearing away, we're cleansing. We're getting rid of the layers of stuff that doesn't feel good anymore. And we're soaring into being our true selves. If we would but trust and have faith. Because I would venture to say, and I'm saying this for myself, that we really don't know ourselves that well. I'm actually looking forward to having a relationship with myself. Came out weird, but I am. Because I don't know. I don't really know. How many of us really know who we really are? You know? So that is an exciting opportunity, I think, for all of us to get to know who we are. That's surrender. When we truly surrender to the divine will, that's when we soar. That's when we soar in the most glorious ways. And remember that God's will is always for the expansion of life. God's will is always expanding. So let us then expand. Let us surrender. Whatever doesn't serve. Even start with the small things. Let go, let God, and then we can all soar into our greatness. And so it is.
And so it is.